The idea of bringing more books to children in developing countries is something I can relate to because I was a child in a developing country. And while I was one of the relatively fortunate children in a number of respects, I grew up in a town that at least had 250,000 people. There was an English language school. I found that my access to books was actually very heavily conditioned by just the accretion of books in the school library over a 20-year period. So to give you an example, I read things like Captain W.E. John's Biggles series, Biggles Aviator World War I, because we had 30 of those in our library. And so despite the fact that the Biggles character was racist and talked about logs, etc., this was one of the things, if you ran out of books to read, that you would work your way through. The odd thing was, if you grow up in that environment, you don't even realize that there's a broader world out there. So literally, when I filled in my application to Harvard College, there was that question on the sheet asking which books have you read, and I had a mixture of what I'd found in the school library and what I borrowed from my uncle, who used to read a lot of thrillers. And so that's how my college application went in, and to this day, I can't quite understand how I made it through the application process. If you think about the fact that I was growing up in a relatively large city, my father was a college professor, and if you think about, nonetheless, how restricted the universe of books was that I had access to, I think that extrapolating that and thinking about the people who really need help, we can sort of infer that the problems are really acute. I think that Worldreader, certainly the most obvious thing that stands out for me, is the huge positive externalities, not capturable by the vendor of a device or by the vendor of a particular title, but that nonetheless are real, affect social interactions on a broad basis. And those are kinds of things where, rather than trying to constrain action simply by what the price mechanism does and does not allow you to charge, one needs to think of things in a different way. How do we get the resources pulled together to do something that's worth doing?